Perfect. Matt, welcome to the podcast. We were just catching up before the recording started, and we will get into some of that because it was all good information. But good to see you, my friend. We're just working out about 6 weeks post program now. From my side, an absolute pleasure working with you. Cool to see the progress. Of course, physically is one thing. Mentally, we'll get into this, but I'm sure full of ups and downs, mental challenges, obstacles, periods of frustration, periods in which absolutely crushing it and killing it. And that is the story of a health journey, particularly as a busy professional, busy life. You know, you're managing a team, running a team within a business. It comes with its complications. As does anyone's life when it comes to their health. Our health interacts with it in so many different ways. But to see your progress, your journey, and to help facilitate it was a pleasure. So thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, mate. Welcome. And we'll get into your experience, but how are you first and foremost?
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for those kind words. It was super nice to work with you. It was definitely needed at that stage of my life, and come out the other side of it and feel a much better person, and obviously in better physical condition as a result too. So
Good.
Lots of positives.
And that's a great starting point. So let's use that as a segue. You set me up nicely. Thank you. Into where you were when you started. Obviously, we went through some introductory calls and kind of discussed where you were and your goals, and first and foremost to make sure did we align in terms of our solution and how we work. But on the contrary to that, there always has to be motivating factors, obstacles, or things that you want to achieve on your end. So if you don't mind, Matt, just provide a little bit of context as to where you were from day one, I guess, or when we got in touch with each other.
Yeah, I think, it'd probably be too derivative to say that I was in a bit of a rut. I was a bit stuck, but I felt like I wasn't quite operating in the gear that I felt like I could, both physically, professionally, lots of different aspects of my life that I thought were plateauing. I think if I recall, one of those early conversations that we had, one of the initial conversations we had, it was like I'd been on a bit of a warpath, this progression through life and into my late 20s, into my early 30s, and achieving status within, my professional career, and getting to that point where I was like at the top of what I thought was top of the mountain, but only really it was base camp really, and I was then looking at the top of the summit and thinking, God, like, how the hell do I get there? And then, realizing, am I physically prepared to do it? I ballooned in my weight. I was never thin in any case, but I'd like to consider myself at some point in my life that I was fairly athletic and doing a lot of sport and participating and going to the gym. And, I think what struck me really was that, like, I'd lost sense of like what a balanced lifestyle actually looks like, or what it represented to me at that time. So like what I thought was balanced was completely not the case. It wasn't really much of anything. It was a lot of work, but not all work, and it was a little bit of health and fitness, but really like not a great deal, not enough to be effective in any way. So I wasn't really being effective, or thought I wasn't really being effective at work, even though it was taking up a large portion of my time. And I definitely wasn't effective from a physical perspective, and looking after myself, even though I thought that was probably taking up more bandwidth, even though it wasn't taking up more time. So yeah, I think it was, I think to use your words, I think I just lost a bit of my mojo and lost a bit of that motivation. And we're stalling, we're stuck in second gear, and not really knowing how to change, so that's why, definitely I say I sought out outside help, but it was it kind of found me at the right time, I'd say.
The universe doing its thing.
There's an interesting
point you raised there, actually, that I want to. It's probably, to be honest with you, it's probably a whole conversation piece in itself in this journey. It's interesting. You kind of came into this not just like I want a six pack for summer and physical. It was more about personal development,
Mm-hmm.
multi different channels or facets of life, professionally and personally, which is important and powerful for people to understand. I think if you want to perform optimally and be at your best, your health is one of the best places to start. It's literally your foundation that you're building upon, but your health system must have a net positive impact on your output and other areas of life. And that's where a lot of people can go wrong. They throw the kitchen sink at their health because they get into this state of super high motivation. It deteriorates everything else. Their relationships or social, their sacrifice has to be made, but socials, their work, like all of their bandwidth is chucked into it, and it's not a sustainable plan, and they burn out. On the contrary to that, as you've experienced, you have to go through some challenge, you have to go through some suck. It's going to be difficult. There's sacrifice to be made if you want to see change. But you touched on there about mental bandwidth and time. And I think it's very easy to get disillusioned between those two things, perceiving things to take up so much time when actually it's mental bandwidth. Maybe tasks that seem to add on to your daily list that don't take that long, our mind starts perceiving them to take so much time, and it all starts crumbling down. So I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with the point in which you're at, in which you started, and credit to you for seeing it as a more holistic change than just a physical one and a health related one. In terms of the journey when we initiated, apologies to anyone if there's any background noise, the cleaner is bloody cleaning the office. Classic. In terms of the start of your journey, so obviously when you enter into anything, you don't truly know what you're stepping into until you're experiencing it, no matter reviews or transformations or feedback or whatever. What would you say was the biggest takeaway or the biggest eye opener, or the thing you would highlight as early on in the process, the biggest like flick of a switch mentally that changed things for you?
It's interesting. We were just talking about like that perception piece, actually, right? Because I perceive to be low on time. I perceive to be, or my perception of my life was that, like, I was very work orientated, and that was taking up so much and too much mental resource. So I think the initial thing was like you giving me that perspective, that outside viewpoint of like, you know what, Matt, like you don't have children, you don't have a mortgage to pay, there aren't like those pressures. You're at such a sweet spot in your life where you actually do have more time than you think to invest in the things that will almost like create less or take away a lot of those like anxieties and things that are clogging like your mental my mental bandwidth in general. So I think that was early on. I warmed to that. I think I really needed that that perspective to come from you, and because that definitely wouldn't have come from me. I wouldn't have arrived at that conclusion or at that viewpoint on my own.
Yeah.
And that was probably like a huge part of me, reaching out, or when you reached out, that I found like you really understood and related. You could relate to that, or the words in which you kind of communicated to me, like really hit a bit of a spot.
Yeah.
So I think early on it was the perspective, and then getting into the conversations that we had. It was like I think I built it up in my mind that having or improving physicality and improving mental well-being and everything in between in lifestyle, like it would take so much more effort than what it actually did, and change is definitely hard. And I was probably in denial for the early part of our time working together. I think I still let distractions or things that I'd planned, like going on holiday was a convenient way for me to say, oh, I don't have time right now, or I'm not gonna put the reps in. I'm not gonna do my breath, things like breath work that we obviously started working on from a really early stage. So I think the power of those habits is maybe to conclude this first point is what you did is try to like really just introduce quite early on very, very simple things that were repeatable that we could do each day and that over time could really stack up to have a very positive impact on my overall health and well-being, and create time, not create time, but create the space for me to think about other things and then to be able to properly approach them with more clarity. So I guess that's a long way of me saying small things can make massive differences, and introducing them early on in the process kind of just
Did
were,
it settle you down a little bit?
yeah,
From the
yeah.
process?
Yeah. Also, like I was kind of like coming in and expecting it to be like, like 6-7 days a week. We were in the gym. It was going to be all consuming. And the reality is that like obviously we worked together on setting those targets and what the end result could look like. But I was quite surprised by it. It doesn't look like a lot, but it's still gonna take myself, like getting over that initial inertia of committing to a plan and committing to a lifestyle change, and yeah, just kind of putting those reps in really early.
Yeah, and credit to you for committing. It's so hard going back to the original point you made around creating the space, but being shown, and I guess me outlining the fact there is room within your schedule or your life, and that doesn't come from a perspective of looking at someone's schedule and going, "You're not busy enough." It's not patronizing that way, but it's so when you're in your own head and your schedule, your responsibilities and your tasks, where you're trying to get to. It's very easy for the lines to be blurred within life. So your work life is your home life, and your task list is one long big thing. You kind of can't see through it. What you can do from an external perspective is you can compartmentalize that for people. So you can say, okay, well, that's work. To serve that over here, you need your health. Then you've got your social life and your family life. How do we find some sort of balance between those? But absolutely, what you said, it's about creating space to go, actually, rather than the day controlling me, I get up and, like I said, you're blessed to not have kids at this stage in terms of actioning within the solution, because it makes life a lot easier. A lot of our clients do have kids. If you do have kids, like, get up, sort the kids out, then I'm rushing out to work. But even in your ecosystem, it's like, we'll get up, get ready for work, go to work, I'm at work, I come home, I've cooked dinner, get back relatively late, I've cooked dinner, chill out for, a couple of hours and go to bed. In that, the mind's going, well, I'm so tired in the evening. There is no time. But when you start reprioritizing things and understand that with a little bit of time chess, or time Tetris at least, you can give yourself mental space to separate from your schedule and kind of look everything from a bird's eye view and go, okay, well, here's some time that I can prioritize and optimize. But it does take dedication to that. I'm sure, like, some of the tasks, breath work, for example, which I know is a bit of a buzzword these days, but I'm sure the first time I scheduled that for you, your mind didn't go, breath work, can't wait to do that. Like, you probably did it and experienced it, and like most people, the first time you were like, that was a bit weird. Feel pretty good for it after, actually, but that was a bit strange. And then there's no way every single day you wake up thinking, get me doing breath work, can't wait to do it. It's a little bit uncomfortable. It took 10 minutes of your time. 10 minutes. I think the thing with the breath work as well, going back to the small menial tasks, like that breath work, it's time in which you're in your own head and focusing on something. You're not in your emails, you're not in your messages or WhatsApp, you're not thinking about work. You have to be really intentful about it. It's like a form of meditation in some way. I think that you use the word separation, which I think is a good way to put it, in that space. Like, having that space to think and compartmentalize is important for the journey. Then we have to put in the pivotal stuff, which is the tools that are going to facilitate physical change for us, because naturally in the early part of the process you want to see some changes, right? You want to build the momentum, and I think that's the biggest thing. How do we build momentum quickly without creeping in old habits and stuff maybe you experienced before, rushing it, too quick too soon, running into burnout very, very quickly. But how can we balance that? How do we have longevity and sustainability in mind? We worked together for 6 months. It's a nice runway to be able to play with. And the whole idea is, how do we build a system for you for life that you can run with, that keeps you in balance and equilibrium and advocates good health moving forward? The body's a nice byproduct of that, right? The way we live our life. So it's interesting. I think space is the right way to say it. So within that experience, and so the start and building momentum, implementing the small habits, giving you space to think and kind of get out of your own way is probably a good way to put it. Again, like I said, I understand until you're in it and you're experiencing it, it's very hard to perceive what it looks like or what's going to be demand of you. Like, I have people that speak to me and they're like, what do you do? What do you guys? It's hard to put into words really until you're in it, because it's the, depending on your lifestyle, going through the journey, there's often kind of different peaks and troughs through the journey. What was the hardest part for you? Whether that's something physically that you experienced, or whether that was something that you had to come to terms with mentally, if that makes
Um, Getting out of my own way, like we started in July. As I was saying before, we had a few obstacles early on. I think I went away for a week and a half, then I went away for another week. And so it was kind of like this very, I don't want to say like stop start, because to be honest, like I didn't really commit to the program. I was doing the training, but I feel like the diet component, just educating myself on like, how I really kind of like hit these macros, the importance of doing so. I think I would say that the adjustment from a diet perspective, giving up booze, or at least trying to reduce alcohol intake to begin with, was quite difficult through the summer and through those holiday periods. Just keeping up the discipline, like, I think it wasn't until really month 3 where, we kind of had like showdown talks. It was like, what, remember why you wanted this in the first, why I wanted this in the first place, and why we're here and what we're doing it for. I feel like, again, like, to bring up that kind of like that period of like denial, or maybe this sense of like, have I really committed to this? Like, do I have the bandwidth to do this? Like, it was a really kind of like difficult kind of like period for me to try and get over myself. And then when I had some like a clear thought, when those holidays were gone and it was just left me, and I was in this like very raw state, it was like, right, all my excuses are past now. I've got some clear runway ahead of me. Like, can I do this? Like, can I actually prove to myself, and can I make this worth it? And can I really lean in and actually listen and execute to what you're telling me and what the program has been designed for? And I think at that moment, 2 months in, I'd been doing the gym work to a degree, maybe not extending myself as much as I should have, and going for that perceived exertion that was so key towards maximizing the time that I spent in the gym and in workouts. But I feel like once I even like half committed, even went 60, 70%, 80% compliance, like the results were just so they were just there, and that was really that was the encouragement I needed at that time. And it was just like, right, this will work. This is working. And it will continue to work so long as so long as I even do 80%, so long as I do 70%, just aim for that, and then try and build that up into increments. But I feel like in that, that month 3 was a bit of a turning point, and we're able to see the weight come off, and just general, I guess I want to say like baseline level of happiness just increased each day. Like, it was 2 months of it of me making it harder work than it should have been, and then it was right, this is I feel like I've got a bit of pace behind me now. There's a bit of momentum here. We're moving towards, the goals that we originally set out to achieve. And I think for that period, or from that period on, like I knew what was required. And I was also like, I had that inspiration then. I could see that the scales were coming down, body fat was coming down, just operational vigor at work, it improved. It was a real kind of like complete overhaul of how I felt about myself, about my career, the professional kind of like challenges that were happening. But yeah, I forget what the original question was here, but
No, it's great. Honestly, great concept.
Those first 2 months were super, super difficult. But as soon as it kind of like as soon as you give yourself over, be vulnerable, and then like really kind of like apply yourself, it was like, why have I waited this long? Like why did I let it all kind of fester even in the first couple of months? This is what it should be about. I'm on the right path now.
Yeah, I love it. I think I said this to you along that journey. There's two things that I highlighted fairly consistently. One of which is there's value to what you're like talking about the first 2 months when it's tough. There's value to what you're experiencing there, because anyone who comes in and it's relatively plain sailing, you do learn less. Like you cliche, you learn from your failures, not your successes. But you're learning through that journey, not about physical implementation of training or what you need to eat. You're learning about yourself. You're learning about your mind, and again, going back to getting out your own way and what it's going to take and what it's going to require and why am I perceiving these things as difficult. And the second thing I always reiterate is not doing it is harder than doing it. You have to do it to know that, because otherwise it doesn't land. I'm sure there was a time I said that to you and you were thinking like that doesn't potentially really make sense. I'm not sure if you remember that or not, but not doing it builds up so much. And you talked about bandwidth there, like start questioning, do I have the bandwidth to do it? The truth is it's not a bandwidth problem. Not doing it builds up so much mental resistance and frustration internally that ends up interacting with how you perceive the program and the solution, and is it working? And I always try and refer, like, trust me, do it and you'll feel it. And we really turned, I can't remember the exact day or whether, I know we had a call that was a little bit of a turning point, which I'm so glad that we had. And after that it was pretty much black and white. You obviously got to a point and you were like, I'm drawing a line under this. And I do think there's two parts to any health journey which is important for anyone to know. One is commitment to wanting to change and being vulnerable and saying I'm gonna get help to do so professionally. The second is committing to actually doing. So it's like committing to putting yourself within the process, as in like a timeline process, and investing your time and financially to it is one. And then committing to actually being the person that you're going to have to require to generate the result is a second commitment. And people reach that second part at different times. For some people it takes longer than 2 months. For some people it's 2 weeks. But everyone has to arrive there within reason at their own time, because there's lessons in that first part that will serve you for the rest of your life. Once we unlock, as we did, the rhythm and the system, and your physique started to change pretty much week on week, like it was incredible to see. It starts feeling good, and when it feels good, there's less and less to take from it, other than, okay, I'll just keep doing this. Like this is working. So, no.
You're sorry to interrupt you there. You're so right with that kind of like the dual commitment, because it was a very easy decision actually, like bringing you on, like. But that was at the end of like maybe like 6 to 9 months of I guess like quite difficult period. So like making that decision was like the relief. I was like, right, that's it. It's done now.
Yeah.
I'll be that I don't really need to, like, Jamie will sort it. Like Jamie will do the work for you. But you can't do it has to come from from me. And I think like it definitely took that sort of like 6 to 8 weeks, the first couple of months of, you know, realizing and then properly comprehending and then actually executing, you know, putting the time in to actually dedicate to the program, be diligent, find out what level of discipline is actually required to be able to see those results.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more on that. And I'm already thinking there's a few people I'm going to send this episode to, because that needs to be reinforced all the time. I think, you know, we want, ideally, you know, we wake up, we take a red pill, and then the next day, you know, all our dreams come true, or we have a chaperone that comes around with us and lifts the weights for us, or does our mobility work and cooks everything and logs it and does all these things. But you know, even if those things were an option, again, we don't build any character internally. We don't build any mental fortitude from doing it. So I guess the next question is how do you feel you've changed? It sounds dramatic, but changed as a person through the process. Well, and you can perceive that in any way, shape, or form. But how is it? Yeah, how do you feel like you've changed, maybe in terms of how you perceive the world or tasks or your life in general?
I think on a personal level, I think I probably have a little bit more respect for myself, like in terms of like how you know, I treat and talk to myself within my own head, and it's a much more kind of like, you know, positive language that's being used all around with those internal dialogues and conversations. And then, you know, I hope that is related to, you know, how I kind of like think about the way in which I communicate with others and the people around me, and just have a little bit more kind of consideration for talking, thinking before I speak. So that's an interesting one. Just generally being more positive and more happy, I think is probably more broadly speaking the overall kind of like byproduct of looking after oneself and trying to be more mindful of the way in which, you know, if I'm looking after myself in a really, you know, in a better way, in a more healthy way, then those sort of like behaviors either mimic or just shine, or, you know, just naturally demonstrate, are more visible to those that closest to me, and they can respond to that in a positive way as well. So I think that's all good. But I will just say, like, just baseline level of happiness, like, that's probably going back to what I didn't necessarily set that out at the beginning, but it was definitely something that I felt was improving throughout the process. And don't get me wrong, you know, there was a couple of wobbles in there, Jamie, if you remember, around December time or November time, and it was just like this, you know, something that just like really off, you know, shouldn't have affected me maybe as much as it did, but because I'd experienced like such a nice period of like 2 or 3 months, where everything was seemingly getting better and going right, and, you know, I was really kind of like just experiencing like great highs for the first time in a little while, consistent highs in the first time in a little while. I was just like, right, okay, you can actually be, you know, this isn't as concrete as perhaps I thought it was, and there's still work to be done there, you know. And so it wasn't like necessarily a reality, well, maybe it was, yeah, let's go with it, let's be simple. It was like a bit of a reality check of like, I am still a bit flimsy, you know, and this is definitely, you know, no matter how far you think you might have come, it's not as far as I wanted it to go, and there's still some work to be done around that time. So yeah, that was interesting. But I think, you know, if I hadn't gone through the process, although it felt quite destructive in the short term, you know, a week later, 2 weeks later, it was gone. You know, that was dealt with. Whereas perhaps like if something similar had happened at the start of the journey, or even 6 or 9 months before, which it did, to be fair, you know, I was thinking about that for a year. You know, like it was I think that some of that mental resilience and fortitude and just being able to get over myself or get over stuff far quicker was again like a nice byproduct of the journey, and just feeling more assured.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, life's got a funny way of kind of bringing us back down to earth sometimes, and that is going to be, an ever moving journey for all of us within life. It's literally how it goes. Our resilience against those will always be challenged, and that's why understanding your health and your health system interacts with your life on every different plane. So how stressed you are, how busy you are at work, or personal things that have gone on, or your relationships, either incredible or breaking down, or anything that happens within life, any complications that sadly happen, it then impacts your health on many different planes. An element of it will impact your internal autonomic nervous system. So your health markers will go down. You're naturally going to feel a little bit worse, changes the chemical balance within your body. But externally, it's going to change your schedule sometimes. It's like your ability to go and execute and do things, or your motivation dips because of those internal changes. It can be complex, and part of this journey, again, I guess why it's called the Consistency Club, but part of this journey is about understanding. Yeah, like we worked together for 6 months, so we kicked off your journey, right? We achieved some great results. We built some solid foundations, learned some lessons along the way. The key to success now is you maintaining and pursuing that journey for the rest of your life with the lessons and the experience, and now being in a better position because you've been through the process. And that's the success. And I think for us, for our monkey brains, who we kind of want, we want to set our sight on the goal, we want to achieve it, and then we want to move on to the next thing. That's not how health works, unfortunately. We're all pretty much declining. We've got to counteract that decline, which means we've got to push ourselves to be better daily. We've got to challenge ourselves, and that journey never stops. So run through, I guess, the core elements that have stuck with you post plan, if you don't mind, because I think that's important context, because for a lot of people, they and I know I've experienced this in previous lives, and you probably have as well. We go through a program or a plan, or even something we set up ourselves, and we get to the end, whether it's a date or we go on holiday or whatnot, and we come back and like lose everything, and then you just go back to normal life, and you got pulled into how you used to be. So what has stuck? What are you doing? What's been the biggest takeaway, I guess?
Yeah, look, I think we're 6 months out of the program. I did have that holiday. I went skiing. I picked up a little bit of a back injury, but to be honest, like where we left the program, I still think that like 80% of that is being adhered to, on a pretty much on a weekly basis. So what it kind of like boiled down to towards the end, or what we kind of left it with, was wake up, do breath work. It was okay, so we'll go with that. So the breath work has evolved slightly. I actually downloaded an app called State, which is quite good. I feel like that gamifies it a little bit more, and is easier to follow. There's just like a 10 to 15 minute mobility routine that I do daily. If you remember, Jamie, had some hip problems when we first started. They have almost subsided. I wouldn't say they've gone completely, but I can run 10K these days, 15K these days, which is great. So the breath work has persisted every weekday. I don't do it on weekends. Similarly with the mobility, I have just two kind of like core. I say core, but that's probably the wrong terminology, because core would be abs. It's kind of like the foundational lower body resistance training and upper body resistance training. So it's literally just 2 sessions a week, but it's the rate of perceived exertion. That was totally I'd say that was like totally new to me for the plan. even early stages of the plan, like, I didn't really realize like how much or what top end of rate of perceived exertion actually looked like for me. Sending you the videos, Jamie, you'd look at them and be like, mate, you've gun to your head, you've got 5 more reps in there. You definitely do. And that's something that's definitely stuck now. It's just like, I don't feel like I need to do more like resistance training, more weights workouts if that level of intensity is actually adhered to. So that's definitely something that's absolutely stuck and will continue to hopefully pay dividends for me for the mid to long term as well. So rate of perceived exertion, really, really key. One of the biggest things that I wanted to do when we first started was make time for tennis. It started off with tennis and paddle, but then was quickly like, do you know what? Paddle isn't giving me any fun. It's actually sucking the life out of it. I just want to play tennis. And
You've
now, like,
a whole movement of people now.
I think it was paddle with friends, great.
Yeah.
Paddle with other people who you don't know, who taken it too seriously, who are either way better than me or way worse than me, and nobody is quite, I guess, on the same level, same standard. It just wasn't worth it. So I think that even though we, for a couple of months, I think within our program, that was actually part of what we were doing. I think ultimately it wasn't having the desired outcome that I was looking for. I wasn't enjoying it, and it was costing me way too much money as well. So I think it was just reprioritized tennis, and that is something I absolutely loved. And pre us working together, I think I played tennis once in the year in the year prior. Like, that's just not good enough. Now I play once a week, at least, which for me is super, super important, and it's really kind of help with the cardio, because ultimately, like, who enjoys going to the gym and doing cardio? But anyway, long story short, the training, or the foundations of the training, 80% of that has stuck. Whereby it's the two resistance training, upper body, lower body, the tennis once a week, and then it's like two other cardio-based sessions with some core training as well.
Okay.
Mobility every weekday. So like that's really what it is right now. And I say that out loud. I hope it doesn't sound like a lot to other people listening to this at a later stage, because it really isn't for me at all. Now, if you asked me like 6 or 7 months ago, I probably would have said like, it actually does look like quite a lot. But then I look back at what sort of like my training workouts were, even at my peak, and that was like going to the gym for an hour and 15 minutes each day, each weekday, training a different muscle group, being in the gym far too long and not necessarily even getting the results. I feel like just from doing those 2 resistance training workouts now, they're way more efficient workouts than going and doing, the bro splits or so it's crazy what you can achieve by just optimizing those training regimes, and also obviously training to pretty much failure.
Yeah, no, it's great to see. Like, for me, it's gratifying because of course I'm focused on the result, and you within the experience seeing some cool stuff. But really, and I do genuinely mean this, the biggest, I guess, just source of motivation when I catch up with clients, or ex-clients technically, and you're still doing it, like you're still actioning it, and a lot of the elements of the lifestyle that we've built, like you've just adopted it and it kind of becomes who you are. That's where the change is. Like, what we're doing within the 6 months is to facilitate that. So it makes me super happy to hear.
I feel like as well, like we iterated and evolved the program maybe 2 or 3 times during the course of our journey together. And I feel like, sometimes you think that you need to do like more tinkering and more tweaking, and what that does really is just like create like more choices or more uh more things to get your head around and to adapt to and to adjust to, and you just seek it, you're just busy, it's just busy in your mind. So I feel like, obviously it's in your name, you're the Consistency Club, and I think that was part of the appeal of joining it. It's like it felt like a really really good fit, and ultimately like it didn't take anywhere near as much as I thought it would.
Yeah.
From a sacrifice perspective, and I know it won't be the same for everyone, it all depends on where they start their fitness journey.
Yeah.
But as I said, 80% compliance, 70% compliance, 80% compliance, for me, like, was enough to like lose 6K in a month, and to drop that body weight. What I'm looking at now, if I know how much if I, over the next 6 weeks now, I'll probably try and have another push. Summer is coming, some holidays on the horizon, want to build some momentum going into them, and maybe drop some body fat, and work on that body composition. Like, I actually know, and I'm pretty confident in exactly what I need to do in order to get to that stage. And maybe, Jamie, in 6 weeks time, I'll show you what I was able to achieve, and really put into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Send it through, because it is great to see, and I back you. Like, you've got the tools, the mental fortitude, the skill set to be able to do it now. The important point of what you just said: most people, right? Their perceived value, in something like this would be like, well, how often does your coach change your plan, right? Our body is looking for just repeat processes to act on. The worst thing you can do for progress is to chop and change. So when I see people, obviously, go into most gyms, and you see people genuinely with no plan, and I'm not, slating them, it's just they don't have the skill set, which is fine, but no true structure around what they're doing. They might have a rough estimation of what they're doing on that day in terms of like muscle group, or I'm going to go do a bit of cardio, but there's no set structure. I'm doing this for this amount of set reps, and then going on to this next. I'm doing this for this time in this heart rate zone. There's none of that. So there's nothing for your body to pin onto, recognize, and go, okay, I'm going to be better than that next time, because you're chopping and changing all the time. The best thing you can do for anyone that is listening that wants to, whether it's develop a physique, get strong, talking about the resistance training modality in, like, specifically, I guess even cardio in some regard, pick the things that feel good for your biomechanics and stick to them, and do them with longevity and sustainability, and wait until you've rinsed everything you possibly can out of them, and you'll get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger on each movement, and then change. And that's an important point. But Matt, let's round out. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I guess one last question, which is maybe the most important. How would you summarize, I guess this is extremely general, but how would you summarize your experience with the Consistency Club?
Is it too fast to say life changing? I look at myself, pre-program starting to how I just feel like I now literally have the tools. Like I have the tools, I have the resources, I have the education. I have a body of work that I can speak to, although the sample is quite small. It's 6 months, but I just feel very, 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 very confident that I have what. Okay, go with this. I'm muddling my words here, but the experience was, it was 6 months for the rest of my life. 6 months of programming that I can take now and apply to the rest of my life. And I think maybe there was something that maybe that was a promise, or maybe that was a something that you kind of got me hook, line, and sinker to get me onto the program. But I genuinely now see that I that is 100% true. From the education that I received around dieting, from the awareness or kind of education on the resistance training, to like how my body reacts, the Whoop kind of components coming into it, and like actually using data to inform recovery. Yeah, look, I think previously, like, I would have been like, go to the gym, do bicep back, tris shoulder, oh my god, tris and chest,
Chest and dries, yeah.
legs, do a shoulder session, and I think I just would have been burnt out on that, and maybe I would had a good like 4 to 6 week period, and then I'll be back into some destructive habits. So I think overall, just like, it was a massive pleasure working with you. I didn't expect to learn as much about myself and the mental side to come into it anywhere near as much as it actually did, but I'm so grateful to you that it actually did, because that was a huge component of the value that you were able to add over that 6 month period.
Mate, really appreciate it, and I echo your sentiment. It was an absolute pleasure, and we will of course stay in touch, and the success is for you. As we alluded to the early part, I can build the structure and the rhythm and provide the accountability, but ultimately you've got to walk the walk. So yeah, well done, congrats on what you've achieved, mate. And I know leading through this summer and for the rest of your life, as you said, you've got the skill set now. But mate, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, taking the time. Hopefully for anyone listening, there's some context there that they can take away and apply to themselves, or at least some lessons to learn. Matt, you're a legend, my friend. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much, Jamie. All the best, mate. Bye bye.